Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Ella, and for today's video I thought I'd discuss a topic that has actually been on my mind for a while, and that is Wicca right for you? Or more so, maybe Wicca is not right for you? And essentially, I kind of felt compelled to talk about this because I've received a couple of messages on Instagram or even here in the comments that were kind of making me want to say, well, perhaps Wicca is not right for you, and I thought, let's discuss that topic. So people often think that now, because they're being called to witchcraft or nature worship, that they have to be Wiccans. And honestly, that's really not the case. As a matter of fact, I would actually say a lot of times Wicca might not be the right path for you at all, and a different path within the spectrum of witchcraft would be more suitable. So just as a refresher, in case this is your first video on witchcraft and Wicca, what even is Wicca? So Wicca is a neo-pagan religion often attributed to Gerald Gardner from around 1950, which is a ceremonial kind of practice or religion. So I say ceremonial because the way that Wicca as a religion is structured is more ceremonial rather than natural flowing, for example. So that means in spell work or rituals there is a structure to conducting those rituals and spells, as opposed to, for example, traditional witchcraft that would not have such a structured way, and you would conduct your rituals much more however it feels right in the moment. In Wicca you also have a high priestess and a high priest, meaning there is a hierarchy, and you also often have covens. By the way, I do apologize if there's like cars in the background. I am in the process of moving. Yeah. In Wicca, you are also, traditionally speaking, initiated into the religion so that you are part of Wicca, whereas with a lot of other parts of witchcraft you would not have that kind of initiation step. So with really traditional Wiccans, you would have the initiation be only within a coven, and if you're not in that coven and you're not initiated by a coven, then that would not be like the proper way to do things, let's say. Whereas more modern Wiccans are often self-initiating and solitary practitioners to begin with. There also is an ethical guideline called the Wiccan Rede, and the Wiccan Rede is essentially composed of two main parts. The first part is the threefold law, essentially a karmic rule, being all about whatever you send out into the universe comes back to you threefold. And the second ethical guideline of the Wiccan Rede is "and it harm none, do as you will." So there actually is a little bit of a misconception with this, because Wiccans have that rule, "and it harm none, do what you will." A lot of Wiccans believe that you are not allowed to do any kind of negative magic or witchcraft or whatever, and that we are very like peaceful witches, let's say, which is for the most part true. However, that does not mean that with really rare circumstances you're not still allowed to go to these other types of witchcraft. So Wicca is a pagan religion with beliefs centered around animism and nature. And lots of more modern Wiccans have actually started focusing more on that nature pagan aspect rather than on the ceremonial traditional part of Wicca, let's say. So we are now getting that out of the way. So you're most likely here because you either just discovered Wicca and you're curious, or maybe you're not that new and you're just curious by the title, who knows. In any case, here are some of my personal reasons as to why Wicca might not be right to you. Obviously, I'm gonna have to put a little bit of a disclaimer right here. These are my personal beliefs and they might not apply to you, and if you have different opinions and you have your reasons for it, I'd actually be really happy to hear about them in the comment section, so we can definitely, like, you know, discuss it a little bit and talk a little bit about it. And yeah, here we go. Let's get right into it. So Wicca is ceremonial, meaning spells and rituals have quite a strict structure compared to, for example, traditional witchcraft or folk magic. So Wicca has that structure, often involving casting a circle, invoking the god and the goddess, etc., etc. If you are interested in that more ceremonial aspect of Wicca and you would like to read more about it, or even how one of those rituals would look like, you can actually look at Raymond Buckland's Big Blue Book. He has a lot of those rituals like written down, laid out for you in that book. I really suggest you to read that if you are interested in that traditional ceremonial aspect of Wicca. This really structured way of magic is not necessarily for everyone, and a lot of people prefer their magic to be more flowing, ecstatic, and not necessarily strict and rules set in place. Wicca also has an initiation. Now, this is something we do need to discuss. I do see a lot of people not doing initiations anymore, and I actually believe that that is just the natural process of Wicca evolving as a religion and moving away from that more traditional aspect of it. However, strictly speaking, you do need to be initiated into Wicca to be a Wiccan. Now, again, that might be against some people's beliefs, let's say, or that might be against what people want to do when they're practicing witchcraft. Some people just don't believe in initiation, let's say, and that is absolutely fine, because with it being initiation based, Wicca to a certain degree could be considered a more closed practice, whereas, you know, other practices are without initiation, meaning they're more open. However, I wouldn't necessarily go as far as actually call Wicca a closed practice, because as you have maybe noticed, Wicca is widely popular, becoming widely popular, and you can buy books anywhere and everywhere about it, and therefore I wouldn't necessarily say that. However, technically, strictly speaking, very traditionally speaking, it could be considered that. The deity aspect in Wicca. Now, this is one of the most important parts in my opinion, and that is that Wicca is a religion. People sometimes forget that. People sometimes think Wicca is a path. Wicca is just a practice, which, not to say just a practice in that sense, but it is a religion, and it does include a god and a goddess. Now, I've seen loads of people say that you don't necessarily have to believe in a god and a goddess to be a Wiccan. And while that's absolutely like fine, that's up to you, I personally do think that because Wicca is structured in the way it is and it is a religion, I personally just feel like it goes a little bit against Wicca as a belief if you do not incorporate a god and a goddess in your own path. Now, I mean, it is your path. You are obviously allowed to do whatever you wish to do so in Wicca, but this is just one of the points that why Wicca might not be for you, whereas witchcraft as a whole might be more suitable, because you don't necessarily have to believe in any deity to practice witchcraft. But with Wicca, you know, there usually is more of a tendency to work with a god and a goddess. Like, all the rituals are always with a god and a goddess, and you know, the covens are based on the god and the goddess hierarchy with a high priestess and a high priest. So the god and the goddess are quite essential in Wicca, and leaving them out, you're almost changing, it's not really true Wicca anymore, if that makes sense. However, this is a little bit debatable, and maybe what I'm saying is like even upsetting you a little bit. So if you have a different opinion, definitely let me know in the comments. I'd definitely love to discuss this a bit further. The next point is Wicca is too nice for you. So Wicca is often considered the peaceful and the baby version of witchcraft. I've seen that kind of float around on Instagram lately with it becoming more popular. So I actually want to talk about that in more depth in a different video. However, if you are looking to join Wicca because you are interested in, let's say, more darker arts, I don't even know. In any case, if you're looking more baneful magic or hexing and cursing and things like that, then Wicca is probably not for you. Not to say that you can't do these things, but usually within Wicca they are not used as much and not usually recommended as much, whereas within a lot of different other paths there's not that stigma around it as in with Wicca. And again, that's something that definitely deserves its own video. But if you are interested in witchcraft and you do like these more darker things, then Wicca might not work for you. So if you are interested in demonology, if you want to work with Baphomet or with Lilith or whoever really, then once again Wicca probably is not suitable for you, because Wiccans, as a matter of fact, don't really believe in a devil or satanic kind of figure, and therefore incorporating these elements can be more tricky, and it might just be a lot better, easier, I don't know, for you to work with witchcraft in a different path rather than Wicca. And the last point, and maybe the most controversial one, is that Wicca is an aesthetic for you. So I have touched upon this topic before in previous videos, and I believe on a podcast episode, and I should really get back into my podcasts. But essentially, Wicca has seen a huge rise in pop culture within the last like 10 years, 5 years maybe. And I mean, huge companies are using Wicca, and they're using that niche, let's say, to target their products, and they're coming out with like all these different Wiccan kind of inspired things. And I am not going to say I'm not a sucker for aesthetics. I absolutely love aesthetics. I've always liked things that are like nicely, you know, placed and arranged, and I do like the fact that it is a lot easier for Wiccans or any kind of witchcrafty practicing person to be able to access tools, for example, so much easier now on Etsy, on, you know, where who knows where. And it's a really great thing for us that we're able to have access and see it more widely. You have the community, yada yada yada, but that also sometimes leads to people being in it only for the aesthetics and not actually because they're truly interested in mythologies or in the practice or that connection with, for example, the god and the goddess and nature worship, because it is a religion. It does take commitment, and with any religion, if you are moving from one to the next, then you should be doing so respectfully and appropriately, and religions do need to be taken seriously, you know. So whilst I understand figuring things out with time, which is absolutely fine, of course, if your intentions for Wicca are more so because your friends are doing it, it's kind of cool, you're kind of like into magic and you've always liked the aesthetics, then, you know, do consider that Wicca is a religion and it should be taken seriously as such. It does have its own beliefs, it does have its own history at this point, it has its own roots with, for example, animism, paganism, European paganism, so just something to consider. So now that we have discussed why Wicca might not be for you, I do think that it's important to note what the right steps for you might actually be instead. So if you're now thinking, okay, Wicca is maybe not so perfect for me as I thought, the right next step would be do more research. I think all of us in the witchcraft community, let's say, are always like really adamant about doing your research, and it has its reasons. For example, you just don't know. If you are new and you only see Wicca as your possibility, then that's because you haven't done enough research, honestly, because there is more than Wicca, and Wicca is definitely not for everyone, as I just stated. So if you are interested in witchcraft, in nature worship, you have things that you're really interested in, then I would definitely suggest to look more into those kind of fields and do more research. With more reading, you will hear and learn about different paths that might fit you better. I would also suggest you to actually sit down and with your journal write down everything that within witchcraft is specifically interesting to you. So if you are really interested in the other side, for example, or you really like to incorporate witchcraft in your cooking, or perhaps you are more focused on nature and whatever it may be, write those things down, and that can kind of give you a better direction for where to head, and yeah, it can kind of guide you into the right direction. None of us can really give you a straight answer of this is the path you should follow, or do this, do that, this is what you should do, because it is a personalized thing. Witchcraft, after time, after years, it'll start forming itself to you, shaping itself to you, and it'll be your own path, and not a single path is going to be, not a single practice is going to be alike to one another. So keep that in mind. All these things that you can see and read are supposed to be guidelines more so than structured, this is how you have to do it, and therefore, you know, take everything with a grain of salt and do your own research. It takes time and it takes effort and dedication. So I hope that this was somewhat insightful to you. So if you like this video, of course, don't forget to hit a like hit the like button, and if you want you can also subscribe to my channel. And I am leaving a couple of resources in the in the description box below that you can check out if you're curious. And thank you of course so much for watching, and of course do have a discussion in the comments with me. I try to check them out all, and it can also just be helpful to other people, newbies, or just in general new perspective, let's say. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Blessed be.